Good news, guys! I spent all my money! That's right, this right here is the Neo Geo AES, or Advanced Entertainment System. It was produced by SNK in 1990 in Japan and was brought over to the States in 1991. The goal of the system was to provide gamers with an arcade-like experience in the comfort of their own homes. And this isn't like those arcade ports we got in the past either, with their downgraded visuals and abysmal frame rates. No, the AES used the exact same hardware as its arcade counterpart, the Neo Geo MVS. The MVS was rolled out in the same year as the AES to the arcades in Japan, and later worldwide, as SNK's attempt at creating an affordable arcade cabinet that would let more of their games into the hands of arcade goers. The cabinet did this via a kind of ingenious design. Most arcade cabinets at the time featured custom hardware. The main boards would have everything on it, RAM, CPU, ROM, you name it. But this meant that every arcade cabinet only had the game that was soldered directly to the board. You couldn't swap it out for anything else. The MVS was designed almost like a high-end console, with built-in controls, display, speaker, complete with a cartridge slot. Or in many cases, it actually had multiple cartridge slots. The MVS came in configurations of 1, 2, 4, and even up to 6 cartridge slots. This was colloquially known as the Big Red. And as a side note, it's sick. I would love to have one of these in like my living room or something, or like a nice game room, but that'll have to wait for later. Then all SNK would have to do is sell MVS game kits to arcade owners. They were just cardboard boxes that housed a plain looking cartridge with a blank label with just a name on it, telling you what game it was, and maybe some little extras for the control deck and a marquee poster to help identify the arcade cabinet for what game it was playing. This meant the arcade owners only had to make the costly purchase of buying the whole cabinet only once, and once the game inside had lost its relevancy, all they had to do was purchase a relatively inexpensive game kit from SNK and swap out the cartridge, decal, and marquee. Then bam, you have a brand new arcade cabinet with a brand new game. This process would take less than an hour and be a fraction of the cost of buying a whole new arcade cabinet. SNK then used the same hardware that came with the one-slot variant of the MVS, strip out the display, make the controller's control ports, change the cartridge size so the MVS cards can't be used on the AES, bundle it all up in a sleek black and gold body, and bam! You got a console that can do real arcade graphics in your living room. Of course, all this came at a cost. Even though you weren't getting the big wood body or the CRT of the arcade cabinet, it was still expensive hardware. The AES debuted with an MSRP of $650, which is expensive by today's standards. But then you remember that this was released in 1991, and if you count for inflation, that works out to about $1,500 in today's money. The only people buying this were super arcade SNK enthusiasts and Tommy, the rich kid who lives in the 6-bedroom mansion with a pool and a hot tub. But surprisingly, despite the eye-watering price tag, the Neo Geo didn't fail. Sure, not a lot of people owned it, but this thing was getting new games until 2004. That's 14 years after its initial launch in Japan. Granted, the success was mostly because of the MVS being super popular with arcade owners. The cabinet practically funded the console's longevity, and the console did end up garnering a cult following that is held up to this day.
Okay, so welcome to my game room. I just wanted to show you my personal Neo Geo AES in all of its black and gold glory. So you can see here, it says Neo Geo, and it has some specs to it in the Advanced Entertainment System, and the nice little SNK logo at the very top. Now also I've plugged into it is a memory card. Now these were memory cards that you could bring to the arcade, and you could make progress on the arcade machine, bring it back, slide it right into your console, and now you have all your save from your arcades on your console, and vice versa. You could save from your console games, take the card out, bring it over to the arcade, slot it in there, and it's got all your info there too. This is actually one of the first consoles to implement a memory card system, so that's pretty cool. And they made them super thin. They're kind of like the size of a credit card, more or less, maybe a little thicker, but pretty cool, pretty thin. And just to show you the scale of these things, I have right here my Super Nintendo. And if we stick them up side by side, you can kind of see the size difference. The SNES is a little thicker, but you overlay them and you can see that the Neo Geo is quite a bit wider. However, it is a bit, about the same thickness at their thickest points, but so if we take a look at what I/O this thing's got, it's got a memory card port that we were just talking about, 2 controller ports, and then an aux jack, and a volume slider. This is actually pretty cool. I use this with my SCART cable that I have for this thing. In the back, it can output RGB through this connector here, and then it actually taps into the audio from this audio jack to send it over SCART, so I can plug it into an upscaler, get that nice clean resolution on some modern TVs. I can talk more about that in a different video if people are interested. We also have, last but not least, a power switch. Nice, big, and chunky. Although not as chunky as the Super Nintendo's. And on the front, we have one button. It's just a big reset button. Listen to that thok. And then, of course, our cartridge, which we'll get to in a second. Yeah, flipping around back, it's just got those two ports, video and a DC power jack. While we're here, we can take a look at some of the games that I have. Here's Samurai Spirits in all of its glory. It's huge. It kind of looks like it comes in a VHS box, but it's actually bigger than a VHS. Wish I had one to show off, but you'll have to take my word for it. It's a lot bigger. And we open up the case, and there you have your instruction manual and the cartridge itself. So you can see kind of how big it is, especially if we compare it to something like the Super Nintendo cartridges. It's twice their height, really, and twice as wide. It looks like they're quite big, and they also have two connectors on the bottom. That's right, this thing has two boards, and they slot in at the same time, and that way the Neo Geo, because it has to read so much data, it can read from two boards at the same time, which is pretty innovative. And that's how they're able to achieve all that memory on these things and have that arcade graphics be able to be stored on a cartridge. And of course, a classic with all Neo Geo games, they mentioned how much memory they take up. I'll pull out another game here and you'll see, but this one's 118 megs. Here's my US Art of Fighting. So this one's in English, the other one was a Japanese game, but 102 megs. Same thing on the inside. It was region free. So the cartridges look exactly the same. Overall, pretty cool, pretty big. They're really nice to have on a shelf because of how big they are and how much they stand out. And I also have its controller. That's right. This thing could take two of these bad boys with this little connector here. And yeah, it's a full-blown arcade stick. It's good, nice and clicky. And it's got big chunky buttons just like that reset button on the console. And then two big start and select. But yeah, this thing was super cool. It's nice and molded to your hand. You can see how it kind of curves over. So super ergonomic. And like I said, you know, you get two of these going in that Neo Geo and you've basically got an arcade experience right at home. Now then, for the MVS that the AES was based off of, we have MVS cartridges. You can see they're a little different, right? There's no fanfare on them at all, no colorful label with any characters on there or anything. It's just a cartridge. I have one that's like a translucent green, one that's a solid white, one that's a solid black. They come in all sorts of different colors. And all you get on it to tell what game it is a nice big but plain label. So you can see this is the King of Fighters 98. It's got some serial numbers, SNK in the bottom. And at the very top, MVS Neo Geo. And it also follows the two board situation here. Actually, since this is translucent, you can kind of see all these chips here. It's pretty cool. But yeah, so since these were planned on just going straight to businesses and going into the arcade cabinets themselves, they have no fanfare on them because why? No one's ever going to see them. Pins are a little different layout between the AES and the MVS. So of course people went out there and they made an adapter. So this is a very common adapter that you find a lot of these JGOs. They work okay. I think they work for like 90% of the library, maybe a little less. I know Metal Slug X doesn't work in these, unfortunately, but my King of Fighters games do. So takes an MVS cartridge up front here, converts it to an AES pin down here. So it's pretty cool. They are really expensive though, so because of that, a better solution might be to just get an MVS. So this is a C1 MVS, meaning it takes one cartridge. And as you can see, it's pretty gnarly looking. This bad boy came out of an arcade cabinet from Mexico, I believe. This blue part down here, which I'm not going to take off because it's terrible to get on, but this blue part right here slots onto a pin connector that would plug into your CRT and your controls and your coin operator and all sorts of other things on your arcade cabinet. But people have gone out there, and you can order these on AliExpress. They're called JAMA boards because that's what this connector is called, a JAMA. It actually says so. It's a JAMA board. And what this does is it takes that JAMA connection and it breaks it out into SCART and DC power. And there's also a power switch. You also have composite as well if you're into that, but the composite doesn't really work on this thing. And it also gives you 2 AES controller ports, so you can use it with that AES controller like you would with the home console. This was what was in arcade machines, so there's no emulation or anything. This is the board it was supposed to run on.
Nowadays, the Neo Geo is still one of the pricier retro consoles you can buy. eBay listings currently have them anywhere from $500 to $700. Although there is a CD-based version of the Neo Geo that is significantly cheaper with cheaper games, but the load times are super long. Speaking of the games, unfortunately, you can't catch a break there either. Even the cheaper Neo Geo games are like $200 and just go up from there. I've seen Garo Mark of the Wolves for multiple thousands of dollars, and that's just for one cartridge. So if you plan on getting into the Neo Geo, just be aware that it can be quite the money pit. The MVS, on the other hand, is pretty affordable. I got my C1 MVS in 2019 for about $60, and the JAMA Breakout board for about $30 from AliExpress. And each game has cost me less than $100. Overall, 34 years later, the Neo Geo is remembered very fondly by the fighting game community for all the games like Samurai Showdown, The Art of Fighting, King of Fighters, which SNK continues to make to this day. Even in recent years, SNK's pseudo mascot, Terry, has been getting cameos in games like Smash Ultimate and Street Fighter VI. The Neo Geo was also noted by Kirby and Smash creator Masahiro Sakurai as one of his favorite console/arcade cabinets of all time. But if you wanted to get into SNK games, I think you'd be better off playing the excellent ports SNK has done over the years. Or if you really want to play on real hardware, finding an MVS on eBay is definitely the way to go. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see me make a video on a specific game or console, leave a comment below, and I'll be sure to see you guys in the next one. Bye!